Okay, welcome everyone. We'll give everyone a few minutes or seconds, really, because time is valuable to log in, get your audio connected. I see a lot of familiar names, so welcome to everyone I'm already friends with. Excited to get to meet lots of you in the future. It's really exciting to see everyone who carved out time for us today. So thank you. I was actually just emailing with you, several of you, so welcome back. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And again, thank you for joining us to today's AI in Higher Education webinar. And Dan, do you want to go ahead and start our slides?
Yeah, absolutely. There we go.
So I'm Cori. For those of you whom I haven't met, I'm the Director of Growth and Strategy here at Enflux, and my co-host is Dan Thompson. He is the Assistant Director of Faculty Development and Instructional Design at Oklahoma State University and has become a good friend because he is a client of ours, and he is a super user of Enflux and all things smart for students. And so he's sharing some of his brilliance today with us. So thank you, Dan, for joining us.
Of course. That's the nice thing you've ever said about me. I appreciate that.
I hope not. A couple of housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute, but we certainly don't want to mute your voice and contribution as a part of this webinar. So if you have questions, please feel free to add it to the Q&A piece of the webinar. I would love for people to drop in the chat if you feel comfortable, where you're from. And also, we have kind of a intro icebreaker question of what's the most difficult or challenging aspect of student remediation for you or your program? And so kind of some options would be, is it the data, like using the data, finding the data, manipulating all of that to know who needs what? Is it the actual like AI piece of like creating remediation plans and leveraging the AI to do that effectively? Or is it the kind of the end part of like actually monitoring and tracking the interventions of the students and having them actually accountable or doing the plan that you've created for them? So would love to see that in the chat so that it kind of helps us guide the conversation. Don't be shy. Feel free to add it in. So as we progress, feel free to keep answering. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to go to overview what we're learning about today.
All right. Thanks, Corey. So our objectives today, I'm trying to keep them pretty specific into what we're going to hit, and we're actually going to follow this flow throughout today. So as Corey mentioned just briefly when she's asking you all about to share who you are and some of those challenges, there's different parts of this process that can be challenging that we're going to talk through today. So one, we're going to start with the dashboards and how we can get identify not just the at-risk students, but the specific areas in which they're struggling. And a lot of this is about speed, right? We're all short on time, especially, faculty are very short on time, and even students don't have endless study time. So this is going to be the part of the process that really helps to speed up things for us. We're going to talk about how to take your course materials that you've been using for years now, potentially, and how to use that to create AI generated assessments, including sharing some prompts. Then we'll get into how to design these for specific for student consumption. We'll talk about marketing to students a little bit as well, which is a key part of that. Um, and then finally, we'll talk about how to guide our students through these plans to make it really what's our overall goal to improve their outcomes. And then we'll close with how to make this something that you can evaluate and iterate over time. So that we really want to make sure this isn't just something a one and done and set and forget, but how we can continually improve this process as we move forward.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Mhm.
So just wanted to, obviously we're, Influx is a co-host to this webinar, so we hope you get value out of kind of the professional development side that Dan is going to show you his use case of how he leverages his student data and AI to create these plans. I do want to touch on, if you don't know about Influx already, and please get in touch because it's a new tool that's available to schools that really helps simplify and close that assessment loop. And so everything from creating a streamlined process for the actual mountains of data that you're collecting, all the way through tracking those student remediation plans and how to hold the student accountable and make sure that everyone's on the same page communication wise, because it's all in a centralized place with an action plan tool. I would love to help your program do that. And so, big thank you to all the customers that are on the call today. We're gonna show you a little bit about the dashboards you already have access to and kind of sneak preview things that are coming in the future. So, Dan, take it away.
All right. So, um, I mentioned this just a moment ago with our objectives, but what I really wanted to make sure, I always like when we do these presentations to have kind of our North Star for today that we're going to continually go back to. And this is going to guide us through the talk, and I'll continually hit on this, but we want to support at-risk students in their prep for high stakes exams. So this can be those, the summative assessments and your midterms and finals. These can even be like remediation or advancement exams. I know I've worked in both human medicine and now in veterinary medicine, and we use different terms for those. But those super duper high stakes exams that determine whether or not a student can actually pass and continue to move through your program or have to repeat or be dismissed. And obviously, there's nothing more high stakes for within your program than those single items for those students. And then what are some of the obstacles? I mentioned time, that's my last note here, but also, we have complex content where we can't just tell students that you have an exam in a week and go study it all. And I mean, think about as like the modern student, the amount of content they have available, even within your courses. Let's just like block out the internet AI for a second and think about most of us anymore have lecture capture. So they have hours and hours and hours of recordings to watch. Um, they have, any quizzes or formative assessments that you've done throughout the semester that they can review, all of your PowerPoints, PDFs, articles, videos you may post. There is it's just an unbelievably high amount of hours for them to review. So what we want to do in this way is to help, how can we help students to be efficient in that study time? And again, these are all around these high stakes exams. So they're high pressure moments as well. So we kind of have to balance this act of not creating new assessments or practice modules or whatever we want to call them for students to where it is a strain on their mental bandwidth. But we also want to create something that does help them use their study time more efficiently, while also not being overbearing on our side as faculty and staff. And so, fast data collection along with AI is really enabling us to fast track that. And what we'll go through the rest of today is really sharing what we've been able to do in our program, and then I'll talk a little bit what we're going to do moving forward. So those are our obstacles. And so let's get into the solution. So first and foremost, in 2025, like everything is pretty much data driven anymore, right? I taught high school a number of years ago, long enough ago that I don't want to admit what years those were. But when I taught high school, everything back at that time was trial and error. You had a great idea as a teacher, and that same thing had to trickle up into higher ed too, where you had a great idea, you wanted to try something in your class, you implemented it, you hoped it worked. And then you would evaluate after the fact, student evaluations potentially. But now we have such ability to have deeper data that tells us information beyond just pass fail for students or overall exam scores, but now we can really drill down to the specific areas where they're struggling. So first things first is to gather that data and analyze it. So for those folks on the call that do use Enflux, my two go-to dashboards are the student performance and course metrics, and then the student and outcomes dashboards. So that slash is separating the two dashboards. I use the most. So they allow me to see overall content areas, but then also I could drill down for specific students when I do have students at risk. So I kind of like when I putting this slide together and I had the title of gather student performance data, that's kind of an antiquated term if you have a program like this where I don't actually have to do much gathering. My gathering is logging in and clicking on the dashboard. So step one, I've already fast tracked my ability to move forward in this process. So now I can make a data-driven decision and identify specifically where students are struggling.
So this is a key part about how Influx can obviously help you. So for those of you who don't know or you're using it, Influx is a software platform that connects to your siloed assessment sources, right? So you're collecting data through your LMS system, typically Canvas or Blackboard or D2L. You're collecting exam data, often through a testing platform like ExamSoft. And then there's a clinical tool like Core or Exact or Typhon, depending on which one you're using. And then you also typically have all your other high stakes exams that you are giving, like your practice exams or your rotation exams. And then there's also your admissions data and your all of this other data. And so what Influx is trying to do is centralize that and aggregate it for you. And so currently, if you're already in the platform, you have access to any of your data sources to these dashboards that then show you the insights that help you identify those students early. So it refreshes daily. So you can go in and quickly see on your homepage, these are the students at risk. And then you can drill into what are the courses that are happening, or you could look at it from a course perspective. So I know Dan was describing his process to me and was saying he actually goes to the student performance and course metrics dashboard, and he looks at the courses that have students at risks and then is able to start with that course, because obviously that would tie into your faculty resources that you have to leverage that content, right? We also have the student advising dashboards, which again, you can click the button at risk and it'll filter out your students to say, these are the students who are at risk today. And any of the dashboards, you can zoom in to see a very granular level. You could see one student, one exam, or just one exam and all the students who had trouble with certain competencies on that exam. Or you can zoom out, see whole core cohorts and compare them from year to year. So that's helpful when you're trying to look for trends in your curriculum and trends of where those points happen frequently that students need that remediation, especially those gateway courses that these are typically the courses where students struggle if they're going to struggle in our program. So this is kind of just a bird's eye view of we have curriculum effectiveness dashboards, we have student advising dashboards, we have big institutional effectiveness dashboards that you can leverage. And for the sake of today's webinar, we're really focused in on these at-risk specific competency-based dashboards like the student performance and course metrics and your students and outcomes. And so again, customers out there, you need to leverage those filters so that you can say, I want to just see the at-risk students or the students who were not meeting this certain threshold. And then I want to look at exactly what competencies they're struggling with for this moment in time or this exam that we're going to try to remediate for. The one thing I wanted to kind of tease out that I'm excited about that's coming in the future is we're actually working on the dream. I think it's a single pane of glass where you could see from a student's admissions data, like their undergraduate GPA, all the way through didactic, clinical data, and all of those assessments to their practice exams, their board exams, so that you could see the student journey in your program and then have alerts when there's students who need help and intervention, right? This is all of that data analytics, predictive analytics work. And Influx we already have kind of a prototype of these aggregated dashboards for that we're beta testing. And so I'm excited to share those with people in the future for customers and certainly people who are interested. And then the next step for us is that we are going to layer on top of that this engagement data, because we know that students at risk, part of this is their assessment data, right? That they failed an exam or that they didn't do well in a course. And the other part of it is that are they even using the resources that are available to them in their Canvas shells, right? Like, are they opening the stuff? How long did they take? Did they watch the videos? Did they take this test for a certain amount of time? And then we're also releasing a student-facing portal. So this remediation process, I see a lot of comments about how it's hard to hold the students accountable. It's hard to get student buy-in for these things. And part of that problem we know is that they don't necessarily feel like it's targeted support. It's like some of the student success advising meetings happen because they're not super data driven. It's like, oh, you need to study more or you need to do better. You need to work harder. And what Dan is going to show you today is like a process where it's a very targeted remediation plan. And again, those of you using Influx can put that in as an action plan right? The platform has this like project management tool. So it notifies the faculty that are involved. It loops in the student. And ultimately, the student platform will give them the roadmap to see their own outcomes data and to also take some ownership in that process and be able to have their study plans built right in. So your action plans now, you can include the work that Dan is doing as a part of that action plan so that you can have milestones, check-in dates, all of that's already built into the platform. So if you want help leveraging that, you can reach out to me, or I know Stacy's on the webinar. She's the director of our customer success and can help you leverage action plans. But that's the full loop, right? Is to get them to actually do it. So I'm gonna stop rambling a little bit, but the next piece of that process is that targeted plan. And so tagging your assessment items makes a real difference in that. Okay. So I hear a lot from faculty saying tagging is a burden. We don't get the data we need from it. So it doesn't seem like it really helps my students. Why am I even doing this? But then other programs who maybe higher up know this is a valuable thing. It's hard to get the data from a tool like ExamSoft sometimes because you're downloading static reports and it's very manual. So I am excited for those of you using this. Our tagging feature, we can help you tag. So this is another great way to leverage AI. So we have Competency Genie that we have a Chrome extension that will help you tag with inside of ExamSoft, but we also can just AI tag all of your assessment items with your competencies. And then you're able to get the dashboards that we're showing examples of and Dan is talking about because you can easily go into an exam, see what they missed, and then create a plan from that. And so if you're not already leveraging our tagging inside of the platform, reach out to Stacy. And those of you who are interested, like let's set up a call because this is a game changer. If you have everything tagged and you can see what they need, then you can use it for this plan very easily.
Yeah, to add to that too, like tagging can be an arduous process, and there is so often when you spend or faculty spend, you know, hours and hours and hours clicking and doing a lot of tagging, only to never see that really come to fruition. And so the neat thing is especially about like the report on the screen that puts all the hard work and it makes it come to fruition. But like you said, with the some of the AI tagging can help make our lives a whole lot easier.
Yeah, it's also this is a slide about our competency genie piece, and I think many of you have heard about the Chrome extension, but when we do it inside the platform, it can really help with any of these big transitions for standards, new curriculum, revisions, pieces
Sorry.
like that. So those of you who are having to transition over to the new COPA standards or to the new nursing AACN essentials, like any of those, we can help you by AI tagging everything you already have. And this is that backward design work that we actually had a webinar about last month. But it's a great way to kind of start where you're at, tag everything, and then go through a backwards kind of transition into a new piece instead of starting fresh and then starting over. And I would say the
Hey,
other
Corey.
key part, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Sorry to jump in. There's a question in the chat. Can you define tagging?
Oh, sure. So when I say tagging, I mean you're either in a tool like ExamSoft where you're adding your competency. So you're adding a content area, a curriculum keyword, you're categorizing your course outcome and objectives, your learning objectives, things like that. You can put onto each individual assessment item. And so you can see like a competency-based program outcomes of where are we assessing this specific content area or competency across all of your different courses and assessments. Mapping. Yes. It's the
Oh, perfect.
same idea. There's so many terms that I think mean the same thing,
They're
but
synonymous. Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think that's all I was gonna say. I'll jump back in if I have more.
Okay. Thank you. So that actually sets a great stage for the tagging mapping. Actually, we use those words interchangeably too, and sometimes it can be a little confusing as well. As Corey was mentioning, when I go to gather the data, one, I always use the filters. Obviously, throughout, we can tag or map to any bucket of category that we want in either Canvas outcomes or in exam soft categories. I do, if for example, I do tags on um, different teaching methods that we use to see if we can evaluate student performance when certain content is taught a certain way, or whether or not we used a formative assessment, or what type of formative assessment it was. So we really try to drill down not just to content specific or blooms or the types of interactions for students, but really we want to know exactly everything that we're doing in the classroom. How can we evaluate it? So one, use your filters, set them to exactly what you're looking for. In this case, the two areas that we're looking for in this remediation process, I really focused in on um, the level of the content. So we use either Bloom's taxonomy, or I even tag items by clinical application versus clinical recall. So I want to know specifically what the level at which the students are struggling, and then just the content itself. So I know if I look at my a dashboard in a specific course, let's say like cardiopulmonary, I can then use my filters by content area specifically, so I know where within that course students are struggling, and then I can also look at the level of which they're struggling. So I know right away, okay, this is we're going to target this remediation. The student is struggling. Oh gosh, let's just, for the sake of working in vet med, let's just say like canine respiratory issues, and they struggle with clinical application and decision making. So right there, I know this is where I'm going to start to focus their study, because they're doing well in the other areas. We also can identify those at-risk students. So obviously, this is where we're going to start our conversation a lot, right? We want to target the appropriate students that need this additional help. And then after we know which students need the help, and then we know which areas in which each student is struggling after looking through our performance dashboards, then I actually go ahead and I reach out to the student, prompt them for their self-assessment. So I ask them, actually, I'm going to escape this for a second. Let's see if I can do this without messing up. This is an example of a survey that I for students. Now, I haven't released in a survey form. Initially, I've just have done it in email with students, but as this is a process that we'll talk about at the end is expanding, just basic things. So these are placeholders, right? But how confident do you feel in certain areas? And I have them rank those. We ask them things from to describe concepts or steps that confuse them, to which types of what type of questions or thinking that faculty asks them to do are most difficult for them. So whether it's analyzing data or a clinical scenario, et cetera, including different types of questions as well. So, and we really, the main point of this is really to get the student to reflect on their performance, so that I saw a lot of folks at the beginning say things like, this is, one of the more difficult parts for them is that student buy-in part of the process. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're getting the students to buy in and identify their areas of struggling as well, so that when they do get these kind of customized modules just for them, they're able to see that they're targeting directly where they have shown that they're struggling. Now, of course, if you'd asked me this about 5 years ago, I would have done this the opposite. I was doing this the opposite direction, where I would talk to the student, either small groups or cohort, or sometimes individuals, on where they're struggling, and then I would use that to go look at the data. Now I actually flip that and I start with the data, because it helps me to start the conversation with the student. So, a lot of that little like reflective survey I just showed had a lot of placeholders, content area one. So obviously I make it specific to those to specific courses usually. But if I do see an area where one student specifically is really struggling, I will at least like bring that up in a conversation with them, just so it's a point of emphasis from the beginning. So when we have their self-assessment results, and then we add that to the dashboard information, there's our targeted content for remediation. There's a prompt here at the bottom. I always just like to have these on the screens. This is exactly what I use, obviously, with what you should insert where for your course. As it says at the bottom, you'll get this after the fact. So feel free to copy and paste that into whatever AI tool that you use. And then we're always going to combine this with the course content. So so we've identified data-wise and student evaluation-wise, where, or student reflection-wise, where students are struggling. Again, even if you disregard some of the student feedback, and you want to focus more on the data, just the sheer fact that you've done that survey really does start this buy-in process. It's really started like the marketing to students process to get their buy-in. And then obviously anytime you are going to sell that to them, we obviously have to follow through and deliver on that, so it's worth their time to study with it. So next, we want to get our aligned instructional materials. So I just mentioned before our example is canine respiratory and clinical application is where our fictitious student is struggling. So if it were me, I'm a non-content expert in the field of vet med. I know about any health issues related to my dog, and that's about it. So I have to get this information in my role as staff so that I then can go pull the PowerPoints, PDFs, articles, lecture capture transcripts, whatever it is that you use to write your assessment items, or that you use that's testable material for your students. That's where I go to pull that information. So now I know what I'm going to use to actually make this AI generated content. Just for the record, I always do get permission from any faculty member to use their materials to put into any AI tool. So the neat thing, and actually the hyper valuable thing about this process of using your content to put into, in this case, ChatGPT for what we use, is it creates the AI generated content in your voice. So it uses the terms that you use. So I saw a lot of folks in the chat at the beginning. I saw a lot of health professions areas that popped out, some nursing and different human medicine schools. And anyone that's worked in medicine, even those that don't actually have degrees in a medical field, do understand that for every type of diagnosis or patient issue, there's a lot of different ways to say the same thing in medicine. There's many different terms that are synonymous, and that if you use if you just ask the AI to create the learning materials for students, and I'll get into specific what I mean by learning materials too. It may not use the terms that you tend to use to teach students in class, and then these practice materials that we're making for students that are struggling can be a little bit misleading and take up more of their time. So again, using your materials makes the AI generated content in your voice. One neat thing that we kind of found from this process too, it realized we had this unintended finding of like new tagging opportunities for exam items and content. So it made us realize that if we were better about tagging our exam items, and then like for Canvas outcomes, if we tag our content better in a certain way, that it allows us to find that information more quickly. It makes the data that we get from it more valuable. And I'll kind of speak to that a little bit on the last slide. So here's our game plan. Again, we know, just to kind of reiterate where we're at, we know where the student is struggling data-wise. We know where they've self-assessed to say that they struggle. And then we want to meet them where they're at and create engaging interactive materials for students to practice, because we're going to have them self-assess through these formative assessments as well. We don't want to just say, hey, you're struggling with canine respiratory, go study that stuff, because obviously the students, especially if they were able to self-reflect and notice that's where they're struggling, their current study plan isn't helping them to be able to pass the exams or be out of that at-risk area. One key point I like to mention too, as we make these AI generated assessments, these are not to change student study plans. This is actually just to better inform them. So we make these, so I have it on the screen. Yeah, we make these to be about 20 minutes max per module. A lot of times, especially for these like higher stakes preparatory materials, and for when we're talking about individual students struggling, we make these to be about 10 to 15 minutes per module, each module is focused on a subject, to be like an overarching subject. So we want students to be able to do these practice items and then get the feedback, and then self-identify from these assessments even further where they're continuing to struggle. And then obviously revisit them after they've restudied the material if they are struggling. So here's my game plan. I usually do 5 multiple choice questions per topic. Most of our exams are multiple choice anyway. We want to prepare them in that theater for how they're going to prepare. 2 to 3 short answer prompts, especially if they're struggling, these next two, if they are struggling in a clinical scenario, case-based learning, that kind of thing, where I have had students in the past say, Dan, and this is true of most health profession students, right? When things are black and white and things are correct and incorrect, and they know that they can study material, memorize it, and then regurgitate on the exam, move back or move on, they do great. But there's many students that struggle with that, the gray area of medicine, and where not everything is always just absolutely correct or absolutely incorrect. And because of that, we want to help them to practice more of those clinical and critical thinking reps. And we will even start this as early as our first year. So short answer prompts to get them to think clinically and critically, and then also brief clinical scenarios. And like I have on the screen, just quick context, diagnosis, management. I will have a single open-ended prompt within these. A lot of times it'll be something about what the diagnosis is or what's the next step in the process. We do that a lot so they can start to think, throughout the process and get more reps thinking about diagnosing a patient versus a management plan for a patient. One, additionally, we always try to have these. We try to diversify how we deliver these to students. So we want to have these, not just have them think in different ways throughout the process, but I also will kind of intersperse them. So multiple choice questions and then the open-ended and then another multiple choice question and open-ended so that they're actually thinking more critically just about the content, not just kind of in this like mode of all multiple choice questions. We want to, for lack of a better term, keep them on their toes a little bit as they're going through and studying and self-assessing, because that really is a help to make sure they're focusing on the content and truly assessing their knowledge. Additionally, in the physiologically, one of the great ways for students to learn and retain information is to return back to that same content, but in various modalities, various forms. And so that's what we're doing here. We're having them think about it in a multiple choice way, but then also having them think in an open-ended way. Even if it's over that similar content, that's what's going to help that turn into long-term retention for them. So I mentioned it here at the bottom. I'm going to mention it probably on the next whatever slides we have remaining. Feedback, feedback, feedback. Make sure that you always have feedback for each of these questions. So for every multiple choice question that I write on the next slide, I have, or whatever tool that you use to deliver these, I have the rationale for why the correct answer is correct. I also have rationales for why all the distractors are incorrect. So we also tell students as a part of this self-assessment to, even if they answer the question correctly, read that rationale, make sure you understand the why as well, because that's obviously critically important to their understanding. Even and especially for those short answer prompts, we always provide the feedback there. I always call the feedback on those the most ideal answer, and then we give students those. So we ask them truly to critically think, to actually type and enter an answer, and then to submit it, and then look at what the feedback is on the next slide. For the record, actually, I'm going to jump. I was going to get ahead of myself. We'll wait on the for the record. So after we create, sorry for flipping back, after I take my game plan, I've made these, upwards of 11 content items per topic, and have them ready to roll with the rationale. Obviously, they always go to faculty review first. Nothing ever goes out to our students that is AI generated that is not first evaluated for accuracy by our content experts. So don't worry, rest assured, it's not going from the ed tech guy's desk straight to a student. We obviously never do that, and I always stress with our faculty to make sure they review it with a fine-tooth comb. The more we do it, this started out, 2 years ago as being a process where I would collaborate with faculty. A lot of times I'd come back and have to rewrite a prompt because they would say things were way off. Other times I would come back and I'd have a document back from faculty that would have highlight or red marks or however they wanted to edit, and it was edited up quite a bit. Now through honing these prompts pretty finely over time over the last couple of years, I do get very seldom do I get a lot edits from faculty because the accuracy has just improved over time. Also, since the AI has memory, it understands what I'm wanting and in this process. So some pro tips: use a living document. I always use Google Docs, so we're not trading static documents back and forth. A living document makes the process go more smoothly. It also makes sure that you're using the most updated information to deliver to students. This is really in an effort to make sure that I never have anything go unchecked that to where I don't accidentally post something, make something available to students that has not been evaluated by faculty. I always ask faculty, and so whether you're the faculty or you're like the ed tech person on the call like me, to identify why the edits are being made, it just improves your future prompting. Even if you're making your own prompts as a faculty member and putting these together, if you find yourself editing, take notes of what and why you're editing and include that into your future prompt. For any fellow nerds out there, that's prompt engineering. And so that's I continually iterate, whether it's my own feedback for the prompt or whether it's from other content experts. And I continually iterate and improve my prompts over time so that it reduces the amount of editing that needs to be done. And the most frequent response I receive anymore from faculty, the content experts reviewing this, uh, is quite simply, Dan, eliminate the questions 2 and 8 because while they're good, I just didn't really emphasize those in the lecture. Obviously, if it's in the written lecture, the AIs can pull in. It doesn't know how much you emphasized it when you gave the talk on it. So that's the most common edit that we make anymore, is just elimination based on the fact that it wasn't especially for like an advancement exam or a final exam. It just wasn't high stakes content that they wanted to focus on for a review. And again, that process of saying, hey, Dan, take this out because I didn't really focus on it, that's helping, again, efficiency for student studying as well there. So one of the key points that I've learned, oh gosh, over the last 6 months maybe, is to package these into interactive modules as much as we can. So we want to really, this is us as faculty and staff controlling the pace and process at which students are going through this content. So we don't want them to skip ahead, basically. Think about like a case scenario, for example. If you post a Word doc or a PDF or PowerPoint, whatever, and students can just flip ahead to the end to see what the case is, they know that if anyone reads any case and the diagnosis is that the dog has parvo, like as you read through that entire case study, whether it's a really long one or a short vignette, you're reading that with these rose-colored lenses of I know what it is, so everything really makes sense to you the whole time. And you're not actually challenging yourself to think critically about it as a student. And so if we allow them to flip ahead, student or just human nature being what it is, a certain percentage may do that, even if we instruct them not to. Then it's really losing its value as a study material. It's kind of like, for any of us when we were kids in math class, remember like in high school math, the odds and the answers to the odd numbered questions were always in the back of the book. So I always got those correct because I knew what the answers were going to be. All those questions made perfect sense to me. The evens, I actually had to think and apply and really try to test myself on those. So let's get rid of that, odd answers in the back of the book and make this to where we can control the narrative of how they interact with the content. Interleave assessment items, I mentioned this before. So multiple choice, short answer, case vignette, mix those up. It is a better way to get students to think about the content and in a way that is going to end up being more long-term retention. And I already warned you on this, but feedback. Make sure you're always applying that feedback as quickly after the process as you can. Just for the sake, if anyone's wondering, the tools that you can use to deliver these types of interactions, I've used like Nearpod, Kahoot. You can do this in Canvas. You can do Canvas quizzes, and whether you do a rationale at the end for the questions, you can, or you also can do you can put in text blocks in a Canvas quiz. So you can actually do your open answer feedback directly after the question, just with a text box as well. So if you wanted to make kind of hack that to be a little bit more interactive, you can. And then you can do it with ExamSoft as well. If you think about ExamSoft's quite the way that the questions are created, it's basically a slide-based delivery tool like you would with like PowerPoint. So you truly could just on the slide after an open-ended question, or excuse me, not slide, the question block technically after an open-ended question really could just be feedback. You can make an essay question and in the stem of the question, give the feedback to the prior question. So you can kind of hack that a little bit. Feel free to, my email's at the end. If you have any questions about those types of tools, feel free to shoot me a message and we can chit chat about that. You can even do it with Google Forms for the record. That's a free tool that we can do this as well. So I mentioned this before that we want to be able to market and instruct our students in a specific way. So the 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 key point in this is, and I actually delivered a talk recently, and I thought people, some of the folks in the audience thought I was lying about this. I'm 100% honest. If anyone wants to hang out after this, I can show you the data. But when we create these practice modules, either on where for whole cohorts where it says where students are struggling, but in this case, for what we're talking about today, for specific students where they're struggling, if it's the individual students, we have 100% buy-in. When we collaborate with a student, get their buy-in with the self-reflection, and then deliver a customizable material that is they all complete those because we've developed that relationship. If it's for small groups or a large cohort, we get about 85% of our students completing these modules, and we have yet to make these for points, not even participation points. These are just, we noticed that you're struggling. Here's the cohort. This is helpful stuff. I always post a message for students, and what I always say is to make sure that they're self-assessing their performance on these items, that these should not replace their study plan, but direct where they study moving forward, that they can help them study more efficiently moving forward. And while these might not be for points, the points will show up on the exam. And that gets a very high level of buy-in to, and oftentimes we have many students repeating those as well. Oh, and sorry, do I have time for this? Yeah, one other hack I like to share as well when we talk about the interactive modules. AI can help you to create the imports for ExamSoft and Canvas specifically. If you use Articulate Storyline, I just did this morning actually, AI can create the question import for that as well. That's another program I did mention before, sorry, in addition to Nearpod and Kahoot and all those others, is Articulate Rise or Articulate Storyline. So if you're thinking at some of the beginning, I've talked about saving time, saving time. One of the great time savers is after I make these AI generated items, typically faculty, honest to God, it takes them 5 to 10 minutes per module to look them over to say, hey, Dan, trash these 2 questions, go with the rest. They're ready to go. My workflow then is to throw it back into ChatGPT and have it create it for an import into the program that I'm delivering the materials. So then, and if you've ever tried to import questions into Canvas, unless you're some whiz with QTI files, it is a pain in the neck. I've always had a tough time trying to import files there. With thanks to AI and work trial and error with the model a few times, I now have it to where I can import 100 questions into Canvas in one fell swoop. So just remember that with the power of AI that you can skip steps ahead there as well. Again, email me at the end if you want to chat about those specific prompts as well. So how do we market it to the students? I kind of mentioned this on the last slide. We provide them the why, how, and when. So why should you use these? Why they are going to benefit you, why it's going to help you with your studying. We do talk to them a lot about self-assessment. In addition to me doing this during orientation, moving forward, we're actually going to include this into one of our professional skills course. So it's going to be part of our curriculum that we do teach students about how to self and study skills. We're also going to teach them about appropriate use of AI starting in the next semester as well, so that they can be part of this process too. How to use them. So oftentimes, I mentioned you should be using them to help inform and direct your study plan, not replace it. These also are not very intimidating for students. Think about, for those of you that are faculty in these fields and have all these degrees you're helping your students to prepare for, there are times when studying is a huge chunk of your day or your weekend or whatever, and you go somewhere, whether it's at home or a coffee shop, and you hole up and you really hunker down. These aren't that. These are 20 minutes. So we're finding students do these at various times throughout the week and weekend even, to where they're actually engaging with this content earlier in the process than they normally would for study time. So if they have Saturday set to study, on Wednesday night when they are hanging on their couch, they can flip through one of these modules and self-assess to prepare themselves for Saturday better. So we've really noticed the value in them being more consumable helps them. And sometimes we post several of these, especially for individual students. If we have students struggling in 6 content areas before a huge cumulative final, we will make 6 specific little assessment modules, because it helps them to direct their studying, but it also helps them to not be overwhelmed. And then all of and then the when, of course, we talk to them about repeating and going back to these to study. These all do, and we have a ton of data. Again, I'm not going to pull my dashboards up because there's student information, but if I were to pull our dashboards up, we have student data that shows when we boost our student engagement, it does improve their exam performance. And Cori, I saw your camera come on. Were you gonna pop in, ask a question, say something?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions in the chat, and
Okay.
one was just if you had an example of one of these student plans that you could share, and an
Oh, sure.
example of the student assessment, like self-assessment form that you had used in the past.
Okay. Yeah. So the this I kind of popped on this really quickly earlier. This is basically the student assessment form. In all honesty, previously I've only delivered this in a body of an email. But as we are, I think on my last slide I have next steps. As we get into next steps, it is going to be to make this a much more repeatable, formalized process. So right now, this is what this is our reflective survey, where we ask them to rate their confidence level by specific content area. And these are for me to give to my faculty to help fill out, right? So they can put their content areas in. To select content areas that don't feel very clear. And we'll have multiple select there. Again, I'm going to, these ones for individual students, I will customize these when we can, to go off of the data. So I'll know which courses to hone in specifically. So I'll know where they're at risk, and then I'll have the topics from that course specifically. And then also I've mixed in some open-ended questions to describe the key concepts that confuse them the most. And then I do like to ask them too about the difficulty level, so that they can start. This is really for their benefit too, so they can see, oh, I really do struggle with making treatment plans. And so that, and then of course, not only does that tell them they need to study more there, but then that also means that that gives me the information on the level at which I need to make some of um, the different interactions. As far as the output, I don't have one up right now. I can show you if you email me at the end. I can hop on and show you on a Zoom call sometime. But this is a look at, this is my Chat GPT. This is the output. So this is the prompt that I had on one of the slides, just copy and paste it in there where I plugged in my information. These are the documents. These 3 documents were all went together with this one overall topic area. And then this is where I have my question, correct answer, and then explanation of correct and all of our distractors. And I'm going to flip through these multiple choice. And then I have down here that this one I made specifically. Obviously, this student was struggling with clinical scenarios. So I went straight from the multiple choice to the clinical scenarios. And so I have, for the sake of this, where the students need those critical or clinical thinking reps, I don't we make some very long cases. I have some case prompts that almost span a whole entire Word document page. For something like this, we just want the quick, signal and then diagnosis and treatment. And we want them to just get more prompts critically thinking than we do want them to take time reading through a long case. So this is truly 1-2 sentences, signalment, finding, prompt, rinse, repeat. So we want to get that muscle memory for them to critically think. For the record, I have polled students. Again, this is an informal poll, but the students that have used these for individual exam prep, and they've given really positive reviews at how this has helped them to perform better on their exams, and that we have the data to back that up. Any other questions? Did I answer those okay, Cori?
Yeah, I do think it would be helpful to see, like you mentioned, like using Nearpod or Kahoot and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think at some point seeing that, like a total plan is helpful, so
Okay.
people have a visual of what you end up with after the fact. But
Okay.
I will put in a plug. Dan did create a resource for everyone, so we will email this to all of you, including the recording of the webinar. But he called it a dashboard driven exam preparation
Mm.
playbook. And so it's a 7-step framework that includes the steps of this process, but it also includes the AI prompt template that you can use in order to create these kind of plans for students. So you'll get that later today once the recording has processed, and we'll send that out to everybody.
Thanks, Corey. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
And any of my colleagues that know me on the call are rolling their eyes that I used the word playbook and made it a sports reference. So sorry, I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to our references. Okay, let's bring it home with this, and then we'll have time for more questions at before the top of the hour. So we've already gone through, right, just to take us back through the process. We identified where students are struggling with our dashboards. I mentioned the two that I like to use the most at the beginning. Again, I'm guessing the slides will be available too, Cori, in addition to the suite. So
Yes, we're sending the slides as well.
perfect. So at the beginning, there has the dashboards that I like to use, and we have some screenshots there. So we identified where students are struggling data-wise. We had students buy into part of that process by doing a quick reflection that takes 3 to 5 minutes max for them usually. And then we have that we took our content, used along with the AI prompts, generated the engagements for students in a way that meet them directly where they're at, where they're struggling, but also challenging them to think in the areas where they've shown that they've struggled previously. We've delivered that via an interactive tool. Again, I think my email's on the next couple slides. Just email me. I can show you what said tool. I might even be able to share it. I might be able to share a link. I can make like a quick practice one so you can experience that as a student. And then, and now we're here at the end. We've delivered it. We want to get some information to help us evaluate and then continuously improve this process. So one, collect student feedback. For these small ones, we're literally helping individual students prepare for exams that have reported to be at risk or just the data shows they're at risk. So I've been collecting that feedback right now just through email or conversation with the student. We are planning to formalize that and just ask them to do a quick questionnaire. Again, 3 minutes. Our students get surveyed and fill out enough questionnaires, so we're just trying to just get to the point. We always evaluate the student use of the practice modules. So how many times did they use them is one thing. We know they're using them, but how many times do they go back? I also look at the timestamps too to see when they're using them, how spaced apart they are, because we do want there to be some element of time between them going back through it, as well as that's part of that spaced repetition I mentioned of going back to content over and again. Did it help improve their overall performance? So, right, we're going back to our dashboards after to make sure student performance is where we want it to be. Moving forward for us, we always think about how can you streamline your process. So, we've worked at this to be as quick as possible. It's essentially me working with a content expert. Obviously, I'm just one person. This isn't my only task with my job. So it being efficient has been a big part of it. So one huge step has been what I just mentioned a few minutes ago, having AI create the imports into the delivery tool that you're going to use is of like that saves you so much time in copying and pasting. It also helps eliminate human error, to be honest. I notice I make more errors building these than AI does when it imports it. And by more errors, I mean I make errors and it actually hasn't made them yet. And then we've learned too that improved tagging equals better informed dashboards. And when you have better informed dashboards, you have this faster, more impactful process. So if you're if you are doing a better job, whether it's like what Cori was saying before and working with Enflux to have AI tags done. I know if I'm going to do tags that are unique to us and aren't part of like our graduate outcomes or competencies, but they're more about teaching and learning or content areas or whatever, thing that we're studying out of our office right now. I actually will import those tags. If we use ExamSoft, for example, I import the questions and I can actually import the tags with the questions. So gone are the days of having to flip through, like if you've tagged in whatever the new portal is, enterprise portal in ExamSoft, it's very click heavy, very, very click heavy. I consider myself decently patient and I get very impatient with the amount of clicks I do in there. But if it's whether it's like Cori was saying with the AI tagging with Enflux in the back end, which is obviously hyperspeed, or whether it's you have AI create the import on the front end for the your specific individual tags that you're using, definitely import your questions with tags. It saves an unbelievable amount of time. Next for us is I've alluded to a little bit. We are going to be better about our tagging, both outcomes in Canvas and questions in ExamSoft. We're going to more formalize that survey to be something that is more easily repeatable. Ideally, I would love that survey to help me produce keywords that helps me then just plug and play into my prompt. So I'm trying to fast track that to survey results, keywords created, keywords go into prompt into AI, creation done, move forward. So we'll hopefully get there next. Anyway, if you have any questions for me, I think like 19 times today I said email me. There's my email address, just dan.thompson@okstate.edu. If you need, whether it's to talk about those other little tech programs or our overall process or filtering dashboards or whatever it is, or if you just want to start this process in your program and you'd like a hand in getting it kicked off, that's where you can reach me. And I think we have Cori's info next.
Yes, thank you, Dan. And big thank you to you, Dan, for pulling this together and taking the time to share out your process. I think it always helps people to know what others are doing and when it's really smart and you're getting a lot of good results. So again, thank you to everyone who carved out this time. The QR code that's on here is to book a meeting with me if you're interested in understanding more. And so some people asked about pricing. I would say in general, using Influx, because we have out-of-the-box solutions for all of the different health profession programs, it's actually not as expensive as I think people think it is, but it is typically at an institutional level. So I loved your interest at a faculty level. You can use the Chrome extension. Go to the Chrome store and faculty can use that for free. So log in for that. You can download it right now. But then if you're interested, set up a time to talk to me. And if you're a current customer and you're not leveraging some of these resources, well enough in your program, please do reach out to us because ultimately we want you to be getting out of it what you're putting in. So again, my name's Cori. My email is cori@influx.com. And I hope to be meeting some of you in the future. And if there's any other customers on our call that are using our dashboards in really smart ways, you could be on our next webinar. I'll put in a shameful plug. So reach out to me as well. So thank you again, Dan. And I hope to be talking to lots of you in the future. And we're going to be sending out all these resources. So look for an email from me later today. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.